Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Are Gaucher webinar series. My name is Jordi Perez. I am a medical doctor, specialized in internal medicine and inborn errors of metabolism. Currently, I am working at Centogene as a head of patient advice and liaison service. International Day 2020 is on 1st of October. This important day of the year is an opportunity to give insight into shine the Gaucher community, celebrate their achievements and tell the stories of those affected by this disease around the world. We will be hosting several webinars as part of our series, and we are happy to see that you want to get involved. Today, we are talking about the unmet needs of patients with Gaucher disease and the role of patient advocacy with Aviva Rosenberg and Cyndi Frank, both presidents and co-founders of the Gaucher Community Alliance.
Hi, my name is Cyndi Frank, and with Aviva, we're the co-founders and co-presidents of the Gaucher Community Alliance. We're a fairly new organization, and we saw an unmet need in the patient community for more services and more support. So we started this organization a little over a year ago. I have a very long background in patient advocacy with the Gaucher community. I've been a patient speaker for many years for different drug companies. I've been in many drug trials. And I worked for the National Gaucher Foundation for 11 years. And about 4 years after leaving there, we started this organization. And I'll let Aviva introduce herself a little.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aviva Rosenberg, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. Cyndi and I started this adventure last year, so we just had our 1-year birthday, but my experience also goes back a little ways. I'm a patient as well. I was diagnosed while pregnant with my first child back in 2003. And we have 3 boys, and my middle son is 14 years old, and he is also homozygous for Gaucher disease. So I'm both a patient and a parent. And, going through everything as a parent is a different perspective as well, and in making decisions and choices for my son. So we saw there were certain things in the community here in North America that were not being met, and we wanted to jump in and take a part of that and see, we have an amazing board that supports us in everything we do. And we are really trying to collaborate with many partners. And that's what this presentation will talk about. So thank you again for having me, and I'll turn it back to Cyndi.
Thanks, Aviva. Let's go to the next slide. Aviva's going to be doing the slides for us.
Yeah. Before that, we have to explain a little more. Today we will discuss the following topics: the importance of understanding the different types of patient communication during the crisis, the best practice for communication with the patient organizations, and the high cost of rare diseases treatments causing anxiety during the economic downfalls. Okay. So for the audience, if you have any questions, please enter them into the question and answer chat, and we will refer back to them at the end of the presentation. So now, if you want to start, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we're hoping that you will take away from this presentation. One is that we are going to introduce the Gaucher Community Alliance as the type of organization we are, which is a mutual self-help and peer-to-peer organization. So it's formed by patients, both Aviva and I, and our board also. And we feel that it's really important, one, to engage medical and industry professionals, and to meet the ever-changing needs and struggles of our Gaucher families, all types of Gaucher, types 1, 2, and 3. And these needs absolutely are always changing. And also to really engage the community and to share and collaborate, because we're big believers that collaboration can really help solve a lot of the problems that are out there. And we hope you'll be able to understand the different types of patient communication and why they're important for the patient community, and recognize, additional patient needs and organization needs in addition to just receiving treatment, because there are a lot of needs out there that need to be met in addition to the patient getting their medication. And also, we want to recommend the best ways that you can communicate with patient organizations, because we need to disperse that information quickly and accurately to patients and caregivers, and to relate why the high cost of these rare disease treatments causes heightened anxiety during economic downfalls, such as COVID-19 that's happening right now. So next slide, please. Thank you. So a little background on the GCA. The Gaucher Community Alliance, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And our motto is for the patient community, by the patient community. So we really are a peer-to-peer support grassroots organization. And that's how we help people, through that peer-to-peer support and education, advocacy, patient and family resources, and networking. And we believe that increased collaboration in this way and emotional support amongst the patients living with all types of Gaucher disease may alleviate some of the burden that's associated with Gaucher disease. Next slide. So we are made up of not just the two of us, but we have a wonderful board of directors, and we're a North American organization. So we have representatives on our board from both the US and Canada. And every board member either has Gaucher disease or has a family member with Gaucher. And we have representatives from all types of Gaucher, types 1, 2, and 3, so we can understand all the different types of Gaucher and how to provide for them. And our members represent the area geographically and also professionally. So we try to have a very diverse professional backgrounds so that we can provide expertise to the board and to the organization in many ways. And then Aviva and I, as the co-founders and co-presidents, we are volunteering, and we're also consultants. And we do not have a staff at this time, but as we grow and are able to raise more funds, we definitely will be hopefully hiring a staff that can do a lot of the day-to-day needs of the organization. Next slide. So I'm trying to move my picture around so I can see. So we have many, we're starting to create many programs, and our programs really are going to be based around the things that we feel are most important for the patient needs. And one is connecting patients to patients. Peer-to-peer support is huge for an organization, and especially with a rare disease, because a rare disease like Gaucher can be very isolating. And once patients and patient families are connected to one another, they can provide support for one another as well. We educate, so we have a webinar series. We try to put publications out there in collaboration with other Gaucher experts in the community to let people understand as much as they can about the disease. We're advocates, so we are creating a network of volunteers across North America so that we can, one, as in the US, approach our legislators and try to adapt law according to patient needs. And also so that we can have a network of patients, so if someone is diagnosed in a certain state, we can find someone close to them to give that peer-to-peer support directly and someday after COVID in person. Insurance issues, there are a lot of insurance issues in the US, and Aviva is a healthcare attorney, and so she's able to provide an enormous amount of guidance to patients in navigating their insurance. And just all around general resources and whatever the community needs. We ask them constantly, give us suggestions, tell us what your needs are, and we'll find out the right way to provide for them. Sometimes it's easier than others. And next slide. So one of the things we feel, and especially during a crisis, as in the last several months with COVID, we feel that it's very important to communicate with the patients and to communicate quickly. Rare diseases, like I said before, they can be very isolating and they're frightening. And when something like coronavirus hits and we don't understand the biological process of how this virus can affect us, we need to find out very quickly and pass that information onto our patient community. So we do that through a lot of different ways. We have constant webinars, so we absolutely do them quarterly, but we do more as necessary. We do email blasts, so any new information we can get out there quickly, we'll send it in an email blast to our entire database. We have a quarterly newsletter that comes out. Next one's coming out in a couple of weeks. And the newsletter it's more of a community piece, but we do put some crucial information out there. Usually information can be found on the internet first, so we do that more as kind of just a community building newsletter. Social media, of course, is a great way. Many years ago, I and another patient, probably about 13 years ago, created a closed Gaucher disease group on Facebook, and it's grown to about 1,700 participants. So we're able to get a lot of information out there quickly. We also have a listserv, which is a kind of archaic, ancient Yahoo groups, but there's hundreds of people on it and they still use it. So that's also a great way. And it creates conversation in a way that social media doesn't. And then of course we have our website and one-on-one communication. We feel it's really important to reach out one-on-one when we can. If we know someone needs follow-up, then we'll reach out and just check in and see how they're doing. And next slide. So we also feel that it is incredibly important to communicate with medical and industry as well. And it's that, that communication through that triangle that really is kind of a core to patient advocacy. So we have meetings. We've created a patient advisory council, which I can talk about a little bit more later, where we try to get information and relay it as quickly as possible. And that can include medical recommendations, drug access and availability, treatment guidelines, especially during something like COVID, financial resources. A lot of people were hit financially. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Crisis resources, and there's tons of other critical information that just pops up. And so we need the doctors and the industry to get that to us so we can put it out to the patient community. And then of course, even though everyone has access to CDC guidelines and to NORD guidelines, we continually put them out there so that patients have access to that. And next slide. Aviva, are you taking over from here?
Yep, I got it. So before we actually get onto this, I wanted to, one of the great things that came out of this, the collaboration with medical and industry was what we sent out what's called we called it a safety box very early on during the crisis. And that sort of stemmed from an idea where the US working group of Gaucher physicians, they started meeting first weekly in March to talk about what happens when a Gaucher patient gets coronavirus. And these are extremely dedicated physicians all over the country. And every Monday they would get together and go through cases and talk about the best way to treat a Gaucher patient that is positive for coronavirus. So as this process went on, they developed a US working group of recommendations for Gaucher disease and coronavirus. And so the question came, what's the best way to disseminate this information to our patient community? So the pharmaceutical industry, a player in the industry suggested that we send out safety boxes, with masks and antibacterial and other items for safety to our community members. And in this box include the guidelines for treatment. So this was really, this shows we obviously have the list and the members and the contacts. The doctors and the providers have the incredible expertise. And then, of course, to get this done, we would need some help with funding. And so this was a really great project that demonstrates sort of the triangle and what can be accomplished. And this was so well received. We received emails from all over, just thank you for this information. Parents were saying that we're sending this with our kids to college when they go, so that they have this packet. So it was a really, really good project. Especially now, but also at any time, the sort of the growth in the fake news industry is really, it's amazing what the amount of fake news and fake information out there. And even sometimes from sources that you would trust, there's a lot of quick shifting. And so one of the things that we really try to do is to, point our community to accurate resources. And so we do that both with our written materials that we send out, but also we do that with access to webinars. So, as the information, we had a webinar very early on with an immunologist and a Gaucher doctor within the first few weeks of the crisis. And they provided amazing information that was available at that time. And then as time went on and there was more learning in the community, in the medical community, then we provided an update to that. So that, again, you're constantly checking in with reliable and expert information as time changes. And hopefully one day when this pandemic ends and, we can go focus back, it's still about accurate information. And, because we have a great Facebook group and a great Yahoo group, there is sometimes information shared that's maybe not medically accurate. And so while our organization doesn't necessarily comment on particular posts, we do, try to provide education and resources so that community members can sort of discern what is, maybe just a questionable treatment versus accurate medical information. We really, really strongly believe, as Cyndi started talking about, is with connection and communication, and connecting, one-on-one and individually is really, that's what we're here for. And as patients are diagnosed, just in the past year, each of us have had contacts with patients that have either been diagnosed through newborn screening, families that find out their newborn is Gaucher positive, or, people who are diagnosed later in life, teens, 20s. And really making that connection and having someone hear that, oh, wow, there's a whole community of people out there, and providing that initial guidance when there's different treatment options, different providers, and there's a very big geographic range in the United States and Canada, and even treatments within the United States and Canada are different. And so having that individual connection is really, really important. Another thing we did for this crisis was to have chats, so that people, while they were in lockdown, they could sign up for chats and they could really connect with other people. And sometimes this was, sometimes the conversation led itself to Gaucher disease, and other times we just shared recipes and what Netflix shows we were watching. And so the really important thing about this is that these were open conversations, and they were with our community members, and they allowed each other to connect while a lot of people are isolated and staying home and not doing their normal social activities. We did a couple sessions for the kids and the teens, and those were also great. They enjoyed that. My son was asking me when the next one can be. So, while he was resisting at first, he came around and he thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So we hope that this is something in the future that we'll do again, just to connect people, again, as the needs of the community, we respond to that. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about why access is an issue for this is particular to Americans. And I think that, as I'm a board member of the International Gaucher Alliance, and so I think that this is sort of a unique issue. Employment insurance is somewhat unique to the United States. So for a great majority of us, we receive our health insurance through our employers or our spousal employers. So when there's very high unemployment rates, so for example, in May of this year, the unemployment rate in the US was over 13%, which is 10% higher than last year. So you have a great amount of people, 5.4 million people have been laid off in 2020, and they have no health insurance. So there's ways you could buy health insurance, not through your employer, and that's as a result of the Affordable Care Act. So the Affordable Care Act creates health insurance exchanges where you can go online and you could choose a plan and you could buy your health insurance. The problem is that if you don't have a job and you don't have backup resources, the idea of paying a monthly fee for health insurance, and these are very, very high fees, that's a struggle. And so if you have to choose between, paying your rent or paying for a health insurance plan, a lot of people are going to choose to pay their rent, of course. As a rare disease patient, it's a little different for us. So within our Gaucher community, if you're a regular healthy patient, maybe you have some chronic conditions, you might have arthritis, a lot of, or some conditions where treatments aren't very costly. Paying out of pocket or going for a few months in between jobs is not gonna make or break you. The problem with rare disease and Gaucher disease is that the costs of our drugs are extremely expensive. So for example, 25 times more than traditional drugs. That's just the average for rare disease. For the Gaucher, for Gaucher disease drugs in the US, they run about 250 to 300,000 a year per person. So if you don't have health insurance and you can't afford to pay your monthly premium for an insurance, you don't have a job, getting your treatment for Gaucher disease or any rare disease is simply impossible. It's not going to happen. So, we have breaks in treatment. A lot of members of our community, as they're in between jobs, they actually stop receiving treatment. And that leads to all sorts of medical problems. So one of the things that we deal with is trying to help patients find resources that they can maybe get a plan. So there's various organizations that help fund premiums for plans, and these are great for people who are in low income settings. And so if you're a low income, oftentimes you can get some kind of subsidy to purchase insurance. But for people that are in between jobs, they may not qualify for that low income subsidy, and so they're simply without insurance. So that it's impossible for them to afford treatment, and they go for months or even years, but without that benefit. The way that keeps us healthy right now is the great treatments that are available. So as an organization, we really try to respond to what the needs are. And in our strategic plan that we wrote out last December of 2019, and for what our plan was for 2020, it certainly did not look like it looks today. And so, we really sort of shifted away some of our other program ideas that we were planning to accomplish and focused on what the needs of the community were currently. And I think that's really important for a patient organization, that you have to have some flexibility. And, we're able to do that right now because we're small, and our board is 10 people. So we're able to make those kind of shifts. But I would encourage, patient organizations, even big ones, to really be responsive. And it's okay if you don't check off all the boxes in your strategic plan, if that's just not what is needed in the community right now. So we are always here. We are always inviting feedback. I've taken calls 10 p.m. at night on Sunday night from patients that, just needed to know what kind of doctor they should see next. We want to hear from our community. We want them to get involved. Our Gaucher Awareness Month activity is a car magnet that was completely conceived of and designed by the spouse of one of our members. She wanted a car magnet for her car. And so I said, the organization said, great, you should design it, and we'll get it out there. So that's what we're doing. And everyone got a magnet, and that we want them to put it on their cars and send us a picture. So that's our Gaucher Awareness Month. So we really, really want to hear from our community, and the community is the organization. So if anyone wants to get involved, that is excellent. So for, our takeaway recommendations, is really, and again, this is more of an issue for European countries. In the US, we often have choices. So during the crisis, we especially are encouraging home health care because to avoid exposure in clinics and hospitals. So, if the patient can get home care, and usually insurances in the US, insurances are okay with that as long as they're not over age 65. In addition, for other providers, obviously, you have to check in with your patients. Are they taking their medicine? If they're not taking their medicine, then it could be because they don't have insurance. And so the reason they're not asking for a refill is because they can't pay for it. And And then the final thing is these are really hard times, and especially for older Gaucher patients, you know, who have an age and a comorbidities, and they have a rare disease. It's isolating, and mental health is definitely being affected. I'm sure there's going to be psychological studies for years to come on the mental health effects that we are all going through this year. And so I think that just constantly checking in with your patients and with your team to make sure that everyone's okay, and providing referrals for mental health if that's the direction that you believe. So that's our presentation, and I thank you again. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll have a discussion.
So thank you, Cyndi and Aviva, for your presentation. So this is the first time, this is the number 3, the third webinar that we have organized for the events of the International Gaucher Day. So we are very, very happy because it's the first time, the first webinar with a patient organization. So I think that only listening to you, your presentation, we have an idea how is the impressive work that you do every day, how important it is for the patient. For example, I can imagine a patient who is recently diagnosed, and how can he feel, no? And it's the isolation, maybe alone, but it's not true, because it's the patient organization really, you do an impressive, important task, no, for the support and for these patients, no? But yeah, so I think it's important to remark some of the things that maybe in your presentations, it's some reflection as well, but I think that it's important as well to talk about how is the concept of the empowering of the patient, okay? Because it's important things that I think that patient organizations is helping a lot to the patients. So how exactly is, for people is not used to giving this concept, how is exactly the empowerment of the patient, and why is so important? Cyndi, for example.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so it's important. Another important concept for the patients, it's the empowering or empower the patients. No, how is exactly how is exactly this concept? Could you define?
So, and I have to say, patient empowerment is one of my favorite terms. It's one of my favorite things in really in running a patient organization and dealing with patients. So, and first, I do like to say patient empowerment as opposed to empowering the patient, because when you say empowering the patient, it makes it seem like the patient doesn't have a say in anything. And when it comes to patient empowerment, it's all up to the patient. They really have to take part in this empowerment process and helping themselves navigate having a disease. So I think the definition of patient empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. And I have to say that's exactly what happens over time when you become empowered as a patient. You know, empowerment can come in many different ways and shapes and sizes. And it's really a way to navigate your disease throughout life. So one of the first things with patient empowerment is taking charge of your own health. And I don't like to use the word control, because I think at some points, control can have negative connotations. So I'd rather take charge and not take control, because we can't control everything, but we can take charge and take charge of the right steps to being healthier. So, and what does that mean? It could mean compliance with taking medications. So getting your infusion every other week or every week, or taking your oral meds every morning and every evening. It could mean complementary methods, such as seeing an acupuncturist for pain, or seeing a naturopath for certain supplements. It could be as simple as having the right diet, getting enough sleep, just general taking care of yourself, taking supplements if you need them, and exercising. Exercising, even if it's just walking, is huge in not just managing pain, but managing depression and any negative feelings that can exacerbate any type of symptoms, especially Gaucher symptoms. So another is being educated. It's really up to us. We empower ourselves with being educated and learning and understanding how can this disease affect us, what can we do about it, and how can we do it. And education is power. So the more we educate ourselves, the more we know what our options are to be able to navigate our disease. Another big one in empowerment is connecting with others. Like we've both said earlier, a rare disease can be incredibly isolating and frightening. And when we connect with others, we ease some of our fears. Personally, I had been diagnosed with Gaucher for 15 years before I met another person, before I heard of another person. So for 15 years, I went around getting very depressed and very isolated and thinking I was kind of this genetic freak. And then I met another person and I saw she was attractive and smart and normal and she functioned well in life. And I could relate. I could compare myself to that and then improve and improve the way I was viewing myself. Another is there are so many available resources out there and we need to tap into those. And when we do tap into those and tap into the help from others, it's another way that we can empower ourselves and help us navigate better with our diseases. And I have to say, once you start doing all this, you are no longer a victim, but you become a victor and you become empowered in a way that then you feel that you can help others. And in our Gaucher group, in our closed group that's meant for patients only, although some other people sneak in somehow, but we really want it to be a safe net for patients to discuss and to talk and to help one another and to give suggestions to one another. And I have to say, that's true empowerment. When you help someone else with their disease, you realize it helps you as well. And then, when we do this shift from being victims to victors, we kind of one day you wake up and you're like, I can do this, and I can be as healthy as I can, and I can work with the doctors and the medical industry because they're trying to help me. And I think we all know that you can only help someone who will receive that help and help themselves. And I think doing this also helps us to remain emotionally positive. And when we are emotionally positive, that takes a lot of stress off our daily lives and we start to function better in our daily lives. And we start to have, sometimes just being positive and putting a smile on your face can be the difference between having bone pain that day or not, or having fatigue or not. And we get to the kind of at the top of our empowerment process, and it just helps us to live a productive life. And, not everyone has treatment with Gaucher. With type 1, we're lucky. With types 2 and 3, it's up to that parent and that family to help with that empowerment and pass on that empowerment to the child that has the disease. And so, it's a very interesting process and it's absolutely necessary in how we manage our disease.
Thank you, Cyndi. I think it's very important what you said, no? Because you mentioned that you are living to be a victim and you're a vector, so it's very important, and how many things you can do, no? So it's very, very important. So talking about how many things as a patient, as a patient organization you can do, I would like to talk about the synergies or the help, the collaboration with pharmaceutical industry, with pharma, with other teams of research, for example. You mentioned an initiative with the pharmaceuticals company regarding COVID, regarding the shipping the box, so it's very interesting. But I would like to talk, for example, with Aviva. How about regarding the access to the pharmaceuticals treatment, for pharmacological treatments? How is the role of the patient organizations, for example, in the United States, to provide and to help in this access?
Well, one of the things that a patient organization can do, along with in collaboration with pharmaceuticals and the industry, is we have to be about government, lobbying the government and informing the government of what type of resources we need. So we have to speak. We have a lot of regulations in place about what drug companies can and can't do. But one of the ways that we are all together is we all want to get treatment to patients, whether we're a patient organization or industry. The goal is to get the treatment to the patient. So the question is, how do we do that? And one of the ways to do that is through lobbying and informing the government through different organizations and different sessions on what it is that the patient community needs. Because oftentimes they'll pass laws and regulations without just blanket laws that don't necessarily apply. So for example, the Medicare program in the United States is for patients over the age of 65. And so they have an insurance through the government insurance through Medicare. The Medicare does not allow home health care unless you're homebound. And so that means if you're a healthy senior citizen over the age of 65 and you have Gaucher disease or any other disease that needs infusions, you must go to a hospital or clinic to get your infusions. You cannot get them at home. And that's a regulatory rule for Medicare. So obviously this posed a lot of problems during this past year, the COVID crisis. So we believe that people should have the option for home health care anytime. But especially during a pandemic, when you're in a high risk group of being a senior citizen, and you have to go to a clinic to get your treatment. So patients had to decide, well, do I skip it? Because if I go to the hospital, I'm going to get coronavirus, or do I, keep with my treatment so I can keep my Gaucher disease better? So along with many players in the pharmaceutical industry who had an interest in keeping patients on their drugs and the patient advocacy organizations, we did a big letter writing campaign. We signed a whole bunch of letters. There's an organization called Community Congress that covers all rare diseases. And there was a big letter writing campaign to the government that temporarily suspended that requirement, what's called the homebound requirement. So for the duration of the pandemic, you no longer have to prove that you're homebound if you're a senior citizen, and you can get your treatment at home. So that was a very big collaborative response. And in addition, during non-pandemic times, the big thing that patients organizations can do about access is with government is to lower the cost of rare disease drugs, bring more items to market, talk to the FDA, which is our drug and medical device approval organization, about what's needed. One of the things we had planned to do this year, but we're delayed, is we're bringing three type 3 families to the FDA. There's no currently approved treatment for type 3 families, for type 3 patients with Gaucher disease. So we want to bring these families to the FDA in Washington, D.C. and talk to the regulators and show them these families are suffering. They need some type of treatments. If an FDA does not approve a treatment, so even though we know, and most people around the world know, that enzyme replacement therapy can help type 3, it's not a cure, but it might delay it. If it's not an approved treatment, then insurance will be denied. It'll be denied. And then you have to start the appeals process. So these are all things that government can change. They can approve the treatment, and then they can make it easier for families to get that treatment without going through the appeals process. So there's a lot of intergovernmental relations, and both the pharmaceutical industry and the patient organizations are on the same side. The goal is to get treatment, safe, effective treatment to patients and families, to allow them to have live a healthier life, or live the best life they can. So another thing that we're particularly concerned about right now is there's what we have is the Affordable Care Act. And the Affordable Care Act changed the healthcare system in the United States a few years back by eliminating pre-existing conditions. So before the Affordable Care Act was passed, if you had a pre-existing condition, you could not switch insurance. And so if you had a job and you were completely miserable in your job, but you had health insurance, you could not switch jobs because you had a pre-existing condition and you would not be able to get a new insurance. So the Affordable Care Act, thank goodness, removed that. So now we can switch jobs and buy insurance. But the current administration, and now even more importantly, the Supreme Court of the United States, there's a lot of risk right now because the administration is saying that they want to take away the Affordable Care Act. They want to remove it and let the market control, and with no regulation, and go back to the way it was. And so this is a really, really big concern for patient organizations. And so we're watching carefully the elections and the current Supreme Court issues, because ultimately it might be a court that will decide what happens with this law. So there's lots and lots of ways, and I talk a lot about government relations because here in the US, the best way for us to get access is, and ensure access long-term is really dealing with regulations and government entities. And so there's lots of room for collaboration.
Okay, so it's very impressive how many ways, not the collaboration. So it's very important. But you mentioned an important thing as well regarding to create new evidence of efficacy of treatments, for example, because you were talking about, for example, if the replace enzymatic replacement therapy for type 3 Gaucher. So, it's, if there is some evidence, it's important the role of the patient organizations to push as well, no, for this kind of, and to increase the evidence. But another question is, how is the collaboration with the patient organizations and the pharma, for example, in order to create new treatments?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of ways that the patient organization and the drug company can collaborate together. And of course, the patient organization can help with designing trials so that they're easier for the patients to participate in. We can help with recruiting for the trials. And we can help educate the company about the patient's needs. And this is just needs beyond needing a treatment, but the emotional needs, the financial needs, insurance, and the day-to-day issues with having a disease. And I think the more the company, the pharmaceutical company understands this more, I think designing their studies and treatments, trying to find treatments, can go in the direction of more and what the patient's actual needs are. And the Gaucher Community Alliance is very interested, like we said earlier, in that true triangle of patient advocacy between medical and patient and industry. And so I think, though, that there's always caveats to that relationship and working together. So because we believe so much in this, though, that we have created a professional advisory council. And this council, it's a little different from what other organizations in the US have done. We don't have a traditional medical advisory board where we go and ask medical questions, but our professional advisory council is made up of our patient organization with a few patients and the medical industry. So not just doctors, Gaucher experts, but genetic counselors, nurses, others who are involved with treating patients as well. And also a representative from each pharmaceutical company that's a stakeholder with Gaucher disease. So we have all these representatives. I don't even remember, it's at least 20 people on this, I think. And this, during the World, in February, during the World Conference, we had a meeting and all of us were in a room together and we asked questions and we got involved and we had whiteboards and Post-it notes and we got people out of their seats and we discussed and we communicated and we are trying to find those unmet needs for patients. And doing something like this is so incredibly important on how all of us move forward in our jobs and organizationally. And so it's it's a very interesting process. And we ask each representative to talk about, what do you hear from the patient? And what is it that you hear are the needs, and what are the problems? And let's discuss those, because constant communication is what's going to move us forward with this. I'm a firm believer that thought precedes everything. And then when you formalize that thought and put it into words and put it out there, that's where the process starts. So this collaboration is, it's a great way to collaborate, and it's a great way to move forward together. But what it really entails is true transparency. And sometimes that's not always easy, especially for a pharmaceutical company when, there's legal issues and some of that information just can't be out there. So it's, so then how do we do it? How do we move forward? And I think also when a patient is asked to speak to a drug company and to give, it's a lot of it's private information or day-to-day information, or how they're coping with their disease or what their needs are. And I think that information is very incredibly highly valued in a biotech or pharmaceutical company, but it's become kind of a trend, at least in the Gaucher community, because we've been doing this for quite a while. Our first treatment came available in 1991. And I think the patients, and as a patient organization, we have to really represent this, is that the patient also needs to be valued and needs to be rewarded. I think it ends up turning out that the patient feels that the drug company is getting rich at their expense. So how can we share that wealth? How can the patient organization or the patient be more involved with the drug company? And how can they in turn have more transparency and be more involved with us? So, maybe that brings the question on the flip side. A lot of rare disease companies claim to be patient-centric, but what is truly patient-centric? Yes, we do need a treatment, but we also need the cost of that treatment to come down. Because as Aviva explained earlier, it may not be sustainable, the direction we're going in, as more and more rare drug diseases come to market and more insurance companies have to pick up these costs in the US or governments in other countries. And so if we keep bringing these expensive drugs to market, how are we going to sustain this long term? So I think working together, patient organizations working together with pharmaceutical companies, it needs to go beyond just bringing treatments to market, which is wonderful, and we need that. But I think we're at the stage where we have to figure out other ways to work together and to move forward so that we can really sustain this model that we've created and provide treatments and other unmet needs for patients. I know it's a loaded question, but I think the flow of communication and really working with one another is a start. And that's what we're hoping to start with our Patient Advisory Council.
Thank you, Cyndi. Yes, I would like to remark it's very important as well because how participate the patient organization as well in the design of protocols in the different clinical trials because it's very important to adapt the reality in how is the efficacy of the new treatments to the real needs of the patient. So it's very, very important as well. It's one of the things that we like to remark. Okay, so I think that more or less we have covered all the topics that the audience sent with their questions. So Cyndi and Aviva, you would like to add something?
I thank you for inviting us, and to the international community listening. We would love to hear from you, and if there's any way that we can help your organizations or your countries by sharing resources, it would be our pleasure.
If there's ever questions or anything, we're here, and we're always happy to participate and to engage and to, get new and exciting stuff going to really fill patient needs.
Okay, thank you. So I would like as well to invite the audience because we will have another panel of discussion with patients and with patient organizations and with doctors. And it will be it can be listened to the day of International Gaucher Day. So from my side, it's everything. It's okay. So for the audience, don't leave, please, because we are going to launch a survey to improve our webinars, and it's only will take only a few minutes to fill. Okay. So yeah, once again, thank you, Cyndi, thank you, Aviva, and have a nice day. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.